How's it going? I'm James Barney.
And I'm Zach Wolf.
Glasys, also known as GIL Asssayas, is an Israeli pianist, synthesist, producer, and vocalist who delivers intricate virtuosic keyboard parts, electronic soundscapes, and impassioned vocals in one package that combines as many influences, including electronic music, alternative rock, jazz, and classical music.
Since relocating to the United States 5 years ago, Glasys has been endorsed by major gear manufacturers such as Nord Keyboards, 64 Audio, Sequential, and Spectrasonics, and has developed a large social media presence with over 2 million total video views. If that wasn't enough, he has had his song The Pressure played at a Portland Trailblazers NBA game. Glasys is also currently touring and collaborating with our hero, Todd Rundgren, having filled in keys for the 2018 Utopia Reunion Tour, the 2019 White Album Tribute Tour with a cavalcade of other artists, and with the upcoming Clearly Human virtual tour.
Also close to Zack and I's hearts has been his reimagining of classic video game tracks, such as the Ballad of the Windfish from Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, Marble Gallery from Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and Kraid's Lair from Super Metroid. Welcome, GIL Assayas. And so, just to get things started, when did you start playing piano?
Started playing piano, I think I was maybe, I started taking lessons when I was maybe 8 or 9. I started on violin before that. I was a violinist. As a kid, I started, I think, really, really early. I was 6 or 7.
Wow.
My memory's not that good, as you can tell. Yeah, something like that. And then I eventually I kind of lost interest in the violin, and I just stuck with the piano, and I started taking it more seriously. But at first it was kind of just like a second instrument that I would just I wouldn't spend as much time on it as the violin, which was like my main instrument.
Do you play any other instruments other than violin and piano or keyboards or?
No, I do not. And I don't really know how to play the violin anymore. You know, I could play a few notes, but I stopped playing when I was 13.
Yeah.
Now I'm 14.
So, growing up in Israel, how long were you there for?
I was there until 5 years ago, which is when I relocated to the U.S.
What made you move on over across the pond?
Yeah, well, both my parents are American citizens, and I had a citizenship from birth. So it's something that was always like on the back of my mind. I wanted to move here, and you know, I knew there were many more opportunities in music, and you know, other opportunities as well. So it was on the back of my mind. And then finally, 5 years ago, you know, all the stars aligned, and we were able to do it, my wife and I. But it took a lot of planning and stuff, yeah. But mostly for the music, I'd say, for the music industry here, because you know, Israel is there's a cool scene, but it's very, very small. So
sure, yeah. A very small place with a lot of people. What part of the U.S. are you in now?
I'm in Oregon, in Portland.
Oregon.
Nice.
And we've all heard the story, but could you just tell us your perspective? I remember the 2018 tour was announced. Ralph Schuckett, Willie Wilcox, Chasm, and obviously TR were doing the Todd Rundgren's Utopia. And I remember the Facebook post. I was sitting in my room, and they said Ralph Schuckett couldn't do the tour anymore. We're looking for anybody, and I'm heavily paraphrasing here. They're like, we're looking for anybody to play keys for us. And I was like, wow, that's a very interesting outreach. As I think I had found out later when I met Zach, you knew Rebop, or Rebop knew of you, Rebop Rundgren?
Yeah, so we kind of barely knew each other. Rebop would put together these little basement shows at his place, and I played there with a friend. I wasn't even playing my own music. I was just accompanying a friend of mine. And I met Rebop there, and we chatted for a bit. I didn't know he was Todd's son. At the time, I didn't really know who Todd was. I had never heard his music growing up in Israel, so I wasn't really familiar with it. Yeah, and then a few weeks later, I suddenly get a Facebook message from Rebop, and he tells me that his dad is looking for a keyboard player. He's a touring artist, and he needs a keyboard player urgently. And I told him, yeah, sure, like, ask him to send me an email. And then Todd sent me an email, and I didn't get the first one for some reason. And then Rebop like hit me up a day later, and it was like, "Hey, you got to reply to this. It's urgent." I was like, "I didn't get anything."
No.
So then Todd sent me another
Wow.
email, and then I got it. Asked me, "Hey, you want to do this?" And first thing I did was I Googled Todd Rundgren. I didn't know who he was. I was like, "Oh, this is a serious artist." I started listening to the music. I was like, "Wow, this is amazing stuff. How did I never hear about this?" Because I love '70s prog rock and Keith Emerson.
Yeah.
And so for some reason, I'd never heard of his music. I did know "Hello, It's Me." That was the only song I recognized, probably because I heard it on a TV show or something. But I was not familiar with the music. But then I heard it, and I was like, "Wow, this stuff is amazing." So yeah, of course, I want to do it. And then I got the set list, which was very long. I listened to I start listening to the first song. I had like at that time maybe a week and a half or 2 weeks before rehearsals start. I'd never heard this music before. I listened to the first song. I see it's 15 minutes long. And I'm like, "Oh my God, what have I done? What have I gotten myself into?"
The Utopia theme, right?
Yeah. And it was kind of daunting at first,
I'm sure.
to put it mildly. But luckily, as I went down the set list, the songs got shorter and shorter.
Okay. Well, sure. Yeah, as they moved to the pop stuff. Yeah.
Exactly, into the 80s
That's
stuff.
really interesting. Yeah.
And I just shed all day, and I spent all day here in my studio from morning to late at night. The neighbors were like texting me, telling me, "It's too late. Stop." I was working with headphones; they could still hear like the banging of the keys.
Oh my God.
Wow.
And yeah, I was just like, just really working hard just to get to know everything. But after a couple of weeks of that, or a week and a half maybe, I finally felt confident enough to, to go to rehearsals and start playing the stuff. And as soon as I got there, I realized that these guys are very chill, like there's no pressure. And then it was just really relaxed and fun from there.
Nice.
That's good. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that it was nice and chill, and you weren't trying out to be the lead singer of Queen or Journey or something. Going back to that, Googling Todd Rundgren, Zack and I have very unique relationships with Todd's work.
Yes.
What was that diving into that, just that Googling and seeing 20 something albums, and then on top of you're playing for Utopia, who has like 11 albums or something. I could be wrong, a little less than that.
Yeah.
But what was? Do you remember what the first few songs you had heard were, or what you had felt?
Well, I was very focused on the set list that I had to learn because, of course, I wanted to, check out all his music, but I had very little time. So I was very focused, only listened to the songs the Utopia that we were doing for the Utopia reunion. And yeah, my first impression, like I said, was, wow, this is amazing stuff, especially the earlier proggy stuff. I really love that stuff. It's just incredibly creative and unique. When I was listening to the Utopia theme and all that the icon, all that early stuff. I was like, wow, it blew me away. And then, I when I got to the later stuff, the more poppy stuff, I enjoyed that as well. Because first of all, I was not very familiar with Roger Powell's playing, and I love everything he did there. His sounds, his playing, everything is super tasteful. His solos. So I actually learned a lot from trying to emulate him or learn his parts. I learned a ton, and one of my regrets from, well, not regrets, but like I was disappointed that I could never actually talk to Roger, because after learning all that music and playing with these guys, that I really want to have a conversation with him. I have so many questions for him, but unfortunately that's not possible.
I was like, has he ever met Ralph?
I have met Ralph.
Okay.
So Ralph was not feeling too well at first, which is why I got the gig. But by the end of the tour, he was doing better. So he came to our LA show, and I met him there, and he's a super sweet guy.
Nice.
And yeah, that was awesome. Yeah, and Roger, no, I've never talked to him. I know that his health is not too good, so
that's what I've heard too. Yeah,
he probably needs a space, and hopefully one day I get the opportunity to talk to him. But even if I don't, I've learned so much from him just listening to his music and his playing.
So backing up a little bit, growing up, listening to music, what did you listen to?
Growing up, both my parents are classical musicians, so I listened to a lot of classical music and played a lot of classical music. And then later on, when I was 14, I got into jazz and spent, a few years throughout high school obsessing over jazz music and studying it and playing it. So I went through a jazz phase, and after that, some friends introduced me to some indie alternative British rock, such as Radiohead and Muse and a few other bands, and I kind of fell in love with that style of music. And that's what got me into synthesizers in the first place.
Oh wow,
The way that Tom York and Johnny Greenwood
Mhm.
from Radiohead used the synths, so they creating these really ethereal kind of really ambient sounds. That made me fall in love with synths and get into it.
that's funny you say
Cool.
that. I'm not the craziest Radiohead guy, but I really like Ed O'Brien, what he does with the
Oh
guitar.
yeah,
It's his
sure.
soundscapes and the way that he approaches the guitar has always been the most interesting part when I do listen to Radiohead.
Yeah.
Short of Pablo Honey, but okay.
I think that's what most people say. Yeah.
And so jazz, and then do you ever listen to Interpol or anything like that? As far
I
as your
did listen to
British,
Interpol. I actually went to a concert of theirs in Israel, which was a weird experience. It was because the sound was terrible, but they're a great band, yeah. And I did listen to them for quite a while. Of course, I should mention, I should mention the video game stuff as well because I grew up playing video games, and that music, had a large impact on me as well, even if I didn't realize it at the time, but it did.
moving on to that, it's really weird. I'm sure you're just a little bit older than us, but it's pretty amazing what a lot of those. And speaking towards Zach and I, we were N64 guys. It's pretty
Yeah.
amazing that you go to a Guitar Center, somebody hops on the keyboard, and then all of a sudden you hear do 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 do, and you're like, "Who's
Uh-huh.
playing Dire Docks? What is going on here?" And it's kind of amazing that we have these associations with VGM, and we don't even realize it sometimes. Especially Ocarina of Time too. The passion that Koji Kondo really is able to capture in a lot of those Zelda tunes sticks with you. When I'm in peril or something's happening, I hear dun 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 dun, dun, and I'm like, oh no, I got a Z target. I got a Z target. What kind of video games were you playing growing up?
So as a little kid, I only had a Game Boy, not even a Game Boy Color. This was before the Game Boy Color. When I was 6, I think 6 or 7, my dad bought
One of
my
these?
brother and I. Yeah, well, it was actually the original gray one. Didn't even have like the fancy colors or translucent, case or whatever. It's just a plain red, gray Game Boy. The first game I think we got was Battleships. uh,
Nice.
yeah, which was fun. But it was later when my dad bought us the first Super Mario Land game and The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. So those two games made me just, totally obsess over video games because you could really just get so absorbed and immersed in those games. It felt like you were entering another dimension, another world, another story. You could forget about your surroundings and just get immersed in this beautiful world. So those games kind of opened up that whole world for me. And yeah, I was only playing Game Boy until I was maybe 12 or so when my dad bought us a computer for the first time. And only then did I start playing other video games, and I downloaded a Super Nintendo emulator and started playing all these other games that because I never owned like an actual home console. So, I
Yeah.
started catching up I started catching up on, the Link to the Past and the other Mario games, and all the stuff that I did not get to play, and the N64 stuff as well. So
Truly some of the best music comes from
Oh,
that
for sure.
area. Super Nintendo, N64, PlayStation 1, most definitely. Were you in any other bands before doing your solo work?
yeah, so after I finished, I graduated high school. Um, I put together a band with some friends, and we started as a Coldplay tribute band. At the time, Coldplay had 2 albums out, and I really loved them. So we put together this tribute, which was meant to be like a one-time thing. It went so well that we ended up doing it again and again, and we started writing our own songs. The name of the band was Miss Flag,
Okay.
and yeah, so after maybe a year of doing the Coldplay stuff, we stopped doing that and started playing only original songs. And that was my first experience as a songwriter as well. That's what got me into songwriting. So yeah, that band, lasted a few years. We did pretty well. We got to tour the U.S. a few times. We got to do a live show on KCRW in LA, and it was awesome. But eventually, the band broke up, and a few years later, I moved here.
Okay. And we've creeped on your YouTube channel quite a bit, as you could tell. To
Creep away
watch
as much as you want.
yeah, we've watched the evolution of your gear move from the bigger stuff, the MPCs, and a couple of different larger keyboards, and towards the smaller stuff. We can kind of tell that you got sick of lugging around a lot of big gear. Kind of speak on that transformation of your gear collecting throughout the years.
I still have a lot of big keyboards here, so not sure about that. But yeah, well, in Israel, it's gear is more expensive for one, so I did not have as much as I do now. And when I went through my synthesizer obsession phase, when I first discovered synths, I was buying, trading stuff like crazy. I was constantly changing my gear, trying new stuff, trying to figure out what I like, what I don't like. And now, I know exactly what it is I want. I know what it is I need. So I'm not buying as much stuff. I am lucky to have a good relationship with some companies now. So, often if they put something new out, they'll send me one just to check it out. Um, so that's awesome. So I get to try out some new gear, and I do have my centerpieces that I know that I'm gonna keep for a long time because they're like endless sources of inspiration. Like
Mhm.
the Prophet X and the Prophet 6 that I use a lot, and the Moog Matriarch. So yeah, I do have a lot of smaller devices as well, pedals and stuff. I really love using pedals. But, I try not to overdo it.
So that was the Utopia 2018 tour. I'm sure that was very obviously quite a transformative experience for you in your career. And then Chasm just continued to do the Utopia tour. What was that any different than working with TR and the other guys?
No, I was a lot more confident because I'd already done it, and I knew the guys. Well,
Yeah.
I didn't know Andy, but I knew Kaz, and I'd played with him already, and I knew a lot of the material, even though I had a lot of new songs to learn. But I didn't have that, that crazy sense of urgency because of lack of time. I had a lot more time to
Oh,
learn
sure. Yeah.
the stuff, so it was a little more chill, more relaxed, and it was awesome. I love touring with Kaz, and we were actually in the middle of a tour when this pandemic started, and the tour got cut short, unfortunately. So I'm really looking forward to doing it again whenever it'll be possible.
Nice.
Yeah, that was actually
I
the
think that
last.
the last show was our show in
Yeah,
Cleveland, I think, right? I think it was
I
canceled.
I think they played
I don't
Cincinnati
remember.
after that. Yeah. I
Can't
think I
remember.
remember the only reason why I remember it was because it was the Wednesday before the shit hit the fan, before they started closing everything down.
Yeah.
And then I remember looking at you and being like, I hope y'all make it to Chicago and Cincinnati, and then I think Chicago got canceled, and then y'all played Cincinnati, and then that's when everything started to get shut down. I only remember that because it was like the week from hell. So that's like
I remember just waking up at the hotel and getting a call from Kaz and like, we're going home, everything's canceled. And I was really bummed.
Oh my God.
But at least we had done most of the show, so we only had a few left, so it wasn't that bad. If it had been at the beginning of the tour, that would have really sucked. But you know, it's been weird. It's been a weird year, and I've been home for close to a whole year now, which is really weird. So I'm really looking forward to the Chicago thing now coming up.
And that's like a month and a half long, probably, right?
Yeah, well, if you include rehearsals, it's 2 months. Yeah,
that's pretty cool, though. At least you're out of the house for 2 months and somewhere else.
Yeah. Beautiful Chicago weather.
Nice, windy Chicago. You've been doing the videos on YouTube and stuff, and you know you've been doing the videos about like you make stuff in an hour. When you are writing, like let's say like you have your The Pressure came out in 2016, and your first full length Defective Humanity came out last year, right? The year before?
2019, yeah.
When you sit down, like what do you start with? Like when you're writing music, like what goes through your head when you first sit down when you're writing like your own music?
Usually I just start improvising. Sometimes it'll be a very specific sound that I kind of come up with my gear that sparks an idea. Or sometimes it'll just be on the piano and, you know, I'm improvising, and then only I play something that I'm like, I actually like this, you know. I'm going to try to develop this idea. So that's usually how I start writing something. One thing I learned about myself is that I love working with limitations, with self-imposed limitations. For example, the 1 hour thing, you know, when I know I only have 1 hour to create something, by the end of that hour, it's done. It kind of gets my creativity flowing because you stop overthinking stuff. I think that's the thing that contributes most to writer's block is when you start to doubt yourself too much and overthink and, you know, overthink everything. Like, is that good? Maybe I should try something else. So by limiting yourself, whether it's, you know, only a very specific amount of time or a very limited amount of gear, for example, you know, just use one little piece of gear and write a song with that. That can really get your creativity flowing. So I highly recommend that if you feel like you have writer's block or you're having trouble writing something, just, you know, give yourself maybe 2-3 hours and say, you know, I'm going to record something and it's done. You know, maybe it won't be your best work, but do that every day or every week, and you'll see that it gets easier because I feel like composition is kind of a muscle you need to exercise. You know, it's not just wait for inspiration to strike. It's, you know, you do it all the time and it gets easier. It gets easier to translate your ideas into reality.
Absolutely. Yeah. I believe I do the same kind of time blocking method for when I program as well. And it's called the Pomodoro method. And it really helps you I got an hour to do this, let's do it, you get it done. So I'm glad that really works. And I really like your advice. I think that's really important for people to take on, just kind of like almost force yourself to be creative until you finally go, oh, I can be creative. I know that feeling very well from this past year. I had a lot of time on my hands to get things that I wanted to get done. And unfortunately, music wasn't that. But luckily, with the new year, I've been able to get the K-oscillator out. And the K-oscillator breeds creativity because you're just going like this and up and down. And then you go, oh, this sounds great. What can I do with this? Oh, I'll sample it. And then that breeds another thing. So I really like that. That's great. And I'm glad that you can give people that advice. That's an acquired skill to have that, especially somebody as classically trained as you. I'm glad that you can still have that.
Well, that's the thing. It's also nowadays with computers, we have limitless options. So as a music producer, you know, you you open your DAW and you have a million plugins or whatever to make music, right? But having too many options is not a good thing. Just
Yeah.
you end up feeling paralyzed. You're like, where do I even start? You know, should I start with this? Should I try that? Maybe that's better. You know, so it's really important to limit yourself. That's why I love hardware as well, because you know, if I have a hardware keyboard out and I tell myself I'm going to use this and only this to write a song, I don't have many options. So I just have to really, you know, push it to its limits.
And then speaking of this, if it's a secret, don't tell us. But have you been working on any new material at all for yourself?
Yeah. Well, I'm always working on new material. I'm releasing something next month, which is it's not an original composition, but it's an arrangement of a classical piece that I love very much. So
Nice.
I've got something new coming out, and I am going to keep doing these from scratch videos where I try to write a song in an hour because I'm really enjoying that.
Yeah, those are awesome.
And you know, I have a lot of ideas. Of course, now I'm going to be gone for 2 months, so it'll slow down my output just a bit. But I have a lot of stuff planned for this year.
Nice. That's good. Good to hear.
Excellent. Yeah, good. And I'm glad that you're starting it off with a gig too. moving on to the Clearly Human tour that you're doing in Chicago, as we mentioned. You're going over that material now. Does anything stand out to you with the Nearly Human album?
And there's so many beautiful songs there. Some of them I'd heard before, but most of them I did not. Yeah, you know, Compassion has always been my favorite, so I never got to play it with him, so I'm really excited about that one. And
I'm glad that it's on the
and that whole
set
album,
list. Good.
yeah. So it's not only Nearly Human stuff. There's going to be some additional stuff as well, and I don't know if I'm actually allowed to say what's on the set list, but the songs are all amazing. I cannot wait to
keep it surprised. We'll be watching from the Cleveland because of the what's it called, Geo, so we can only buy the Cleveland show, which is kind of cool. So it's like special for us. So
unless you really want to use a VPN to pay another
you could, yeah.
Anyway,
you're making that up. Doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. It's not real. But that's awesome. Yeah, I'm really glad that you're a part of it. I'm really excited that you get to work with the other people who I don't think you've worked with Prairie in the past or Bobby. Excellent.
No.
And of course the Global Girls too. Yeah. That's really awesome, man. Yeah, I'm really glad. I wasn't expecting you to drop the set list on us, but Nearly Human is I would say my favorite album. I've grown into that album. I've listened to it my entire life. And much like a lot of TR's work, and keep in mind, for me, TR doesn't seem like a real person to me. Like it's somebody. I mean, my first word was Todd. The first letter I could write was R. This person is as real as Buzz Lightyear is to me, right back here. So,
how did you get into his music?
When I was born, my parents bought their first CD player. And my dad hadn't listened to Todd Rundgren since Healing. I think he got turned off by Healing, which is ironically my third favorite album. So they went out, and the year was 1993, 1994, and they bought an album called No World Order. And my dad puts in the CD player, and the first track goes, oh, and it's just chaos, and then it just turns into this like doom metal, like hip hop. Fascist Christ, don't quit your day job, kid. And so ever since then, it was some of the first sounds that I had heard. So it really resonated with me, and it continued. And much like when you were Zack and I's age, I don't know how old you are. We're 27, but kids rewatch the same VHS over and over again, right? I watched Nearly Human live in Japan in 1990 over and over again, much like kids were watching Lion King or other Disney movies. It was
that
like
the Gumby movie.
Yeah, it was like that and the desktop collection. And so my parents, they're like, they got back into Todd. My parents are very different in age, and it just kept being a thing in my life on top of other music. I'm very blessed. My dad is currently 65. My mom's 45. So where my dad's peak of interest in music stops, my mom's picks right up. I can talk about The Cure and Two Live Crew with my mom, and then I can talk about Emerson, Lake and Palmer and The Who
Huh.
with my dad, and that's really
That's
awesome. I'm very blessed because of that, and it just kept snowballing. It's like it's like anything. It could have been Harry Nilsson too. My parents played near Harry Nilsson for me all the time. I just so happened to be TR, and then it kept going. And
here we are.
But the thing about Todd is it's Todd Who. You know, when you're growing up and you tell people you like Nirvana or the Beatles, well, sure, everybody knows Nirvana or the Beatles. But when you go, yeah, I just learned this song last night on a guitar, and you're in 6th grade, it's called Black Mariah by this guy named Todd Rundgren. People go, who? And my first show that I had ever been to was when I was 4 years old in Cincinnati. And it was a surprise. My parents took me to a Todd show. And I remember I was in preschool at the time. And the next day, I went to school and they're like, Jamie, what did you do yesterday? And I was like, I saw Todd Rundgren. I was so excited because Todd was my guy. And people were like, I remember them saying, Todd who? Never heard of them. And I was like, what do you mean? Todd is my world. I don't understand. I also think that there was something there with me being an only child and not having a large family that I really clung to music in general for. But really, it wasn't until I met Zach when I had an interview at the Rock Hall where I really started to, like, my friends had always made fun of me for listening to Todd. They all hate healing. So they would always bring that up and be like, yeah, remember that time you played that Healer album by Todd for us? That shit sucks. But I met Zach, and Zach and I both love Todd. When I first met him, he said, it was during our interview, it's the Rock Hall, and they ask you what your favorite album is of all time, who your favorite artist is. And I said, Life of Pablo by Kanye West, favorite album. And Todd Rundgren is my favorite artist all the time. So I go around the room, I do these interviews, and I sit down with Zach, and he goes, I was really looking forward to meeting you, man. I was just curious. If you're such a big Todd Rundgren fan, do you have a picture of him and you in your wallet together? And I go, odd flex, but no, but I do have this. And I unbuttoned my shirt, had my Todd Rundgren shirt on. Like Superman, like Clark Kent Superman.
Yeah, he was hired on the spot because of that.
That's right. Yeah. And so it wasn't until then where I was like, you know what? Todd is a really big part of my life, and I really grew into his art. I don't know the man. Like I said, he could be Buzz Lightyear to me. So that's why it's been very interesting to listen to these songs my entire life and grow into the things that he felt during Nearly Human, how he felt during Healing when he was recording that. When I'm sure he doesn't even remember what he was going through when he was recording this. So
he has a very good memory. You'd be surprised.
Really? Okay, yeah. Well, someday I'll meet him. Zach's met him a few times. Obviously, Zach had the picture.
I thought
of
you had
him.
met him as well. Okay.
I tried to meet
him
after...
three times so far.
Zach's met him a few times. I tried to meet him in 2013 after a state show, and he just gave me the Todd smile and just kept on going. I was like, see it. And then I did the during his virtual show over the summer, they did the really expensive meet and greet, and I got to talk to him for 28 seconds. And his birthday's on the 22nd, mine's on the 23rd. So we got to exchange happy birthdays, and that's...
So you did meet him. Oh, it was a virtual. Okay.
Yeah.
It's
still cool though, man.
We got one of these, and I got a happy birthday, and
it's good.
I expressed to him very quickly, what I just expressed to you, and I held up my copy of the Windows 95 version of No World Order, and I said, everybody wants to talk about A Wizard of True Star. This is my A Wizard of True Star. This is like everything that I do. I feel like I'm ripping off this album, and I always have. In fact, when I first did in 666-4, which you had heard, and I showed it to my dad. My dad goes, "Oh, dude, you're just doing Cast the First Stone and No World Order. Like this is just Todd stuff." And I go, "Yeah, well, you know." And I even did a cover of Born to Synthesize, and I do a cover of Fair Warning for Todd. So,
That's
but going
awesome,
back
though.
to you, man, what are some major influences other than your classically trained and maybe like you work with T-Pain? What are some hip hop influences for you?
Yeah, well, when I was a kid, when I was in high school, a friend of mine started listening to Eminem, and and I went through a short phase where I was listening to a lot of Eminem. I was never a huge hip hop guy. I like hip hop, um, but it's not like I listened to a ton of it. T-Pain thing was kind of just random, it just happened. I was not intending for it to happen. It wasn't on my radar at all. I had just made this video showcasing a vocal plugin that lets you harmonize your voice as you're playing.
Uh-huh. Like a
And
vocoder?
sort of, yeah. It's called Manipulator, and the company that developed it, it's an Israeli company. They sent me the software. They told me, "Hey, check this out," and I did, and I made a little demo. And T-Pain happened to see that on Reddit and comment on it and say he wants to work with me. So that's how that whole thing started. And of course, I was familiar with T-Pain. I knew his songs and stuff because unless you live under a rock, or you lived under a rock, like in 2007. I don't know what year it was. But yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And
All
yeah,
right.
of course you've
That's
heard
when I
this.
had heard of them. So yeah.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, whether you like it or not, the auto tune thing, that was him. Like he
Yeah, it was his
pioneered
thing.
that in that genre, I know a lot of people have opinions on that. I personally, I actually like it. I like his style. I like what he does, and he's unique. He does his own thing. He's not trying to emulate anyone else. He's constantly trying new things. He's not just repeating himself. He's very down to earth and open minded. He's always looking to collaborate with people, like someone like me who, he didn't know me, no one had heard of me, but he still commented and gave me that opportunity, which is awesome. So that's how I got into, that's how I started working with him. And going back to the video game stuff, so recently I was covering a lot of Metroid, and I see you're wearing a Metroid shirt, Zach, which is awesome.
Yeah, war for
Metroid
you,
Prime.
man.
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
noticed that now. That's awesome.
This is I got off of eBay. It was like an employee shirt. You had to like work for Nintendo to get it. So I don't know if like the developers wore it when they were making it or whatever, but yeah.
It's Metroid Prime,
I always look for
right?
weird. Yeah. Yep, Metroid Prime. Just the
That was
first
developed
one.
by
Hopefully.
Retro Studios.
Yeah, yeah. Which it doesn't have any logos of that on here, but I don't know. I'll just pretend.
Yeah. So what was I saying? Yeah, so I was doing all these Metroid covers this past year, and one of them, I was playing it, and it had this hip hop vibe, and I thought it would be really cool if T-Pain added vocals to it. And I sent it to him, and he liked it, and he wrote lyrics and added his own thing to it. And that was the first time we actually released the
first time
collaboration.
the first time I saw you guys did Brinstar, right? Which I think I only remember because of Smash Bros. That's like, because it's like, it's the map stage. It's how you hear it all the time. So
Yeah.
that was gonna be one of my questions. I was like, how did you come up with doing Brinstar with vocals? So that's a really cool story that he was just like, I like this one, or you both are like, I like this one, let's do this one. So that's really awesome.
Because I've been trying to collaborate with him for 3 years now, and actually got to spend some time in the studio together and stuff, but we never released anything together. We never actually finished anything, not because I didn't want to, but because nothing kind of clicked, so it was nice to finally be able to put something out there, because people have been asking me for 3 years, what happened with T-Pain, so yeah, the fact that it's a video game cover makes it even more interesting, I think.
Yeah, I never. Yeah. If you could collaborate with anybody, who would it be that's out there? If
Tom
you like
York.
had Tom York, that would be pretty sweet.
He's one
I
of my
saw
favorite
him-
artists.
I saw him in Cleveland by himself maybe 2 years ago. It was awesome. It looked like Kraftwerk setup. It had like the 4 keyboards, and then he just kind of went up to each one. And then he had like what's his name? Nigel, the producer guy, was there too.
I
And
saw that show.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
awesome.
It was cool. Very awesome lighting as well. Like I remember
Yeah.
the art. Yeah. So Tom York or Johnny Greenwood as well, because I think he's amazing.
Yeah. Going back to video games, what would you say is like in a whole? Because you pick a lot of different songs from different games. In a whole, what is you say the best video game soundtrack?
Yeah, I think the Zelda stuff is probably my favorite, which is why I've covered so much of it. Metroid as well. I think we all get very attached to the stuff we hear growing up.
Yeah.
Is why when you James were talking about Todd, it's cool because Todd is like a nostalgic thing for you, even though you weren't around when he was releasing this stuff, but because you heard it as a kid anyway from your dad, then it became this nostalgic thing, and you have this kind of strong connection to the music. So it's kind of the same with video game music, maybe even more so, because when we play video games, we hear these tunes over and over and over and over again for hours, so they just really get totally ingrained in our heads. And so I think obviously the stuff I played as a kid I have like the strongest connection to that. So Zelda, Metroid, the Mario stuff as well. I never liked the Mario stuff as much as the other stuff because it's a little too happy for me. I like darker kind of undertones, but Mario's great too. All the Koji Kondo stuff and
Absolutely.
And the other amazing composers.
But Majora's Mask is my favorite game of all time, probably only because of what he did with that soundtrack. It really just conveys like every corner of despair that game is supposed to throw at you. It's very
I did
powerful.
not like that game so much because of the whole timer thing. It just stressed me out.
Yeah, more of an Ocarina Time guy myself.
Yeah, I like taking my time. I don't like having a clock, like a timer
ticking down on you.
Yeah.
Now speaking to that, did you ever play Pokemon?
I was never really a Pokemon guy. I had some friends who were playing it a lot, so I'm very familiar with like the early Game Boy games and stuff. At the time, didn't really interest me that much. I wasn't really interested in turn-based combat games and stuff like that. So
that's other music that when I hear or when I think about, I go, oh man, Goldenrod. What is it? Goldenrod City is like the greatest. It's the greatest Pokemon song of all time. I'm not sure if it's because I heard it 100 times or because it really is that good. But damn, it's a banger nonetheless. So
I think the thing about video game music is so good that you can hear it over and over and over and over again. It doesn't get old. That's why I think video game music extremely underrated as a art form.
Sure.
I would say, Gil, I think you should pursue a video game soundtrack.
Yeah, I think you should too.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely open to that idea. Yeah, it would have to be the right
Metroid Prime 4.
I'm pretty sure. Pretty sure they're already working on that one. I don't think there's ever been a Metroid soundtrack that was composed by a non-Japanese person, so I don't see that happening anytime soon. But one can dream, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, I definitely want to do that. It would just have to be the right opportunity, because I don't want to just score like any game. I want it to be something that I actually like, that I actually enjoy playing, and so
yeah, you don't want to go on Fiverr and say, "I'll make your video game."
$5 an entire soundtrack.
And then, do you have any tips or words of wisdom for musicians that are having writer's block? I mean, we talked about limiting yourself, putting a time block on it. Is there anything else?
Yeah, listen to music that you maybe never even considered listening to before.
Yeah.
A lot of artists, they listen to
that's a great idea.
only listen to music in the same genre that they create. which I don't think is a good idea. Because even if you don't have writer's block, you're going to end up creating music that sounds like the music you're listening to. It's not going to be very unique unless you start listening to something completely different. So I recommend, like open up your mind a bit, listen to something completely different. If you're listening to, I don't know, to metal, why don't you listen to some Mozart or something?
Yeah, Chopin. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And
What's one of the more surprising things that's come up with Todd's career that you've stumbled upon, where you've gone, "Damn, dude, you did this? That's pretty interesting."
yeah, actually is tech stuff. Like he was developing this tablet like way before it was even a thing. And I know that he was the first to do like this interactive album. Um, and I didn't really dig into that stuff too much, but just hearing from him and reading about all this amazing stuff he's done in like the tech world, it's amazing. So yeah,
Patronet,
he's
of
full of
course.
surprises.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did the Patreon thing before it was way before its time.
He wants to bring it back, right?
Is he?
That's what I
Yeah,
had heard.
he
I had heard that, and during the first virtual show, he had mentioned he was going to bring back Patronet, and then that was months ago. So
yeah, we haven't heard anything.
he had also said in the same
um,
breath. He had also said in the same breath that he was currently learning JavaScript and it's very difficult. And so, as somebody who's been down that road, I'm like, I wouldn't have Patronet up either. So
that's I think the most amazing thing about Todd is that he's always learning new things, and
absolutely.
the guy is in his 70s and he's still learning new stuff, trying new things, keeping up with the new technology. One of the things that surprised me about him as well is the way he records music nowadays. He doesn't have a fancy studio with a lot of analog gear. He just has a laptop with Reason. That's what he uses, and he still makes fantastic sounding music on it. So that just goes to show that it's not about the gear; it's about what you have, your skills and your knowledge and your experience.
Yeah, it's wild because he's also been doing that for 20 years too. He's been using Reason since Liars, or even before Liars, I'm assuming. Yeah, that's pretty wild, man. And I'm really glad that you're a part of the Rundgren family, and I hope that it continues, that you continue to have your own success solo. And Zach, is there anything else that you have to say for our guy Gil?
No, I think we covered everything. I just want to thank you for joining us, and thank you for filling in the Todd world.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Stuff you've been doing, your music and your YouTube channel and all the videos. Watching your video game covers every Wednesday during the lockdown was a lot of fun.
I tried to do it every Wednesday.
We talked,
it wasn't really every Wednesday.
Yeah, it was pretty close.
I tried to be consistent with it.
So yeah, we're looking forward to everything that you're going to do in the future with your solo work and YouTube and all that stuff, and we'll be there. And want to thank you again for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. It was great to talk to you guys again, and thanks for all the support. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, and we'll catch you with TR and everybody on the 22nd, I think.
Yep,
that's all right. It's in my Google Calendar. It'll come up. So yeah. All right, man.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Take care.